Jenny Dandy, welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Here, I'm glad to be here.
Great to see you. We got to run into each other at Left Coast Crime in Denver just this last weekend.
So much fun. Your panel was so well. You were moderating one and you were on one. They're so both great.
Oh, thank you. Was that your first Left Coast Crime by any chance, or had you
No, I
gone?
went last year because my daughter lives in Seattle. So even though
Mhm.
my book wasn't out yet, I had to go. So
Yeah.
that was fun.
H- How did Seattle compare to Denver, and what did you think of the whole crime conference experience?
Uh, Oh, it's so much fun because you run into these people that maybe you only see at conferences, although because you follow them on social media, you think you know them. But it's just so how did I compare? Well, part of it in Seattle, since I didn't have a book to promote and I didn't have anything to give out except for a card, no QRC or anything like that. I wasn't there as much as I was there for the Denver one, but they're just it's intimate. You've got fans as well as writers, and it's just everybody just is happy to talk to everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just lively, and everybody's so interesting. They're all, if you talk to the writers, they're all doing what you're doing and thinking about the same kind of things you're thinking about, and so it's so much fun, so exciting.
Yeah. Terrific. Yep. It's intimate, but it's also pretty large. I mean, that banquet room on Saturday night had to have, I don't know, 800, 1,000 people in there.
Was it 38 tables that they numbered? I can't
I
remember,
mean,
but yeah,
yeah, it was a large,
It was
yeah,
huge. Yeah.
yep, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
intimate, but it is, draws a good number of people. In fact, I talked to somebody who said that a fan, and they said that they use it as their family reunion because they all love reading, crime
There you go.
fiction. And so
That's great.
they all come, I think, from the Midwest to wherever they are, wherever the left coast crime is.
That's great. Well, the main reason we're here to talk is about the Brownstone on East 83rd and your first novel, correct?
Absolutely. Debut author at 65.
Yeah. Came out last summer or is
Last
so.
April, end of
Okay.
April.
And a new one
Yeah.
on the way.
Yeah, the next one is supposed to drop at the end of April too, the second one, and the third is a year later. So far three
Fantastic.
in the series.
Yeah. And what's the title of the second one?
The second one is the Penthouse on Park Avenue.
So all New York.
All New York so far.
Is that
Yeah.
where you're from, or do you do
No,
no?
yeah, no, I actually grew up in Northern California, but I worked in New York right after college, pretty much after college, at Doubleday, as a matter of fact, and publishing. And I was in sub rights, which of course is no longer really part of the publisher anymore. It's part of the agents. But yeah, I just loved it so much. And it's always just like, I don't know, it's so vibrant and it's so exciting and it's so much fun to be there. And what a great place to, commit crimes and things because
Yeah.
it's also, in some ways it is very small. Like a lot of times people do not leave their neighborhoods, and yet it's also so big that you can get lost.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
have a
it's
daughter.
this,
Our older
oh,
daughter lives in Brooklyn, and she used to live in the
ah,
Upper East Side of Manhattan, actually at 82nd and like second or third, right in
yep,
there. So
nice.
she always called it her bubble. She had a bubble where she could get everything done, all her needs and appointments. But then, obviously weekends and evenings, a lot of time you're flying out of your bubble to go explore. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
So she's not too far from Isabel's Brownstone, or
yeah.
she wasn't when she was living there. Yeah.
Right, right. Yep. Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
so when you were at Doubleday and working there, was this always been a dream, something you had in the back of your mind? Have you done other creative writing that just didn't get published before?
Yeah. Well, my mother always says that I've been writing since I could hold a pencil. And so I've always thought of myself as a writer, but I think I was sort of too nervous and scared to try to do it for publication. And I was an English major at Smith, and there was very, very little creative writing there. It was all lofty English literature, and I think that that set that bar very high, because literature is really hard to pull off well, I think. And so I think I was just sort of nervous about the whole thing, and so publishing was sort of writing adjacent, even though you're on the business side. So that's why I looked for jobs in publishing, and the only place to do that at back then was New York.
Yep, for sure. So before we get to actually diving into the story and talking about the plot a little bit and characters and the series, when take us back to first beginning to think about the story that went into this. Is this several years of work and writing and putting it together, and talk about how you approach getting it published?
Oh, God. Two very different things.
Yeah.
It was yes, it was very a lot of years in process, because I really just wanted to learn craft. And so about 2015, in the fall of 2015, I took my first class at Lighthouse Writers Workshop in Denver. And I would drive down the 2 hours because I'm up in the mountains. So I'd drive down the 2 hours, and I could stay because I had my sister-in-law had an apartment there. But I really got so jazzed from the classes that I would just drive right back up that same night. But so I started taking lots of classes and doing workshops and things like that. And somebody said, you should apply to the book project. And I thought, there is no way I'm good enough to get into the book project. I need to learn so much more. So I applied, and I got waitlisted. And so I think because I like to think it was because I applied too late.
What is it? What
So
is the book? What is the book
oh,
project before?
sorry. Yeah, the
Yeah.
book project is through Lighthouse Writers Workshop, and
Ah,
it's a
ah,
2-year program where
right.
they deal with a book length project. I think a lot of the MFA programs will do short stories because you can get through that in the workshop for the week. It's just faster to write, I guess, for some people, and then faster to critique. But with the book project, you have weekend intensive. So each mentor has 6 people in their cohort, and then back when I did it, there were 4 mentors, and it was 2 years. So you'd have the weekend intensives of 48 people, and it was awesome. It was just it was you were so exhausted, but you were learning so much. And so I got a full so Ben Whitmer was my mentor, and so he said please apply again. I think he just had a full class, and there was somebody in that group that was her writing was similar to mine, so I could see why he took her. Because anyway, and so the next year I reapplied, but I thought I'm just gonna, that waiting period of a year, I thought I'm just gonna pretend I'm in the book project. Little did I know I was far from being in the book project, but I took lots of classes. My goal was to have a full manuscript by the time I met with Ben after I hopefully got accepted. So long story, but I came in with the full manuscript, like, let's publish. And he says, describe it. And so I did. And he said, give me the next time we meet, I want you to give me a 1 sentence description of what your book is about. I went, ah, there's like, now I really have to focus on this. And at that point, I had 4 point of view characters. And I realized that, well, somebody pointed out that 2 of them weren't pulling their weight. So I had to rewrite it to 2 point of view characters. So long story short, I graduated from the book project in 2020. And at that point, so I got a first read during that 2-year time. I got a first read from Ben, and he gave me 16 single spaced pages of notes.
Wow.
And some of them were, I know, it was awesome. Some of them were really nice, but others were like, a lot of times the mentors just say to their mentees, don't talk to me for a month because it's just sort of like, oh, I hate you for saying all that. But I knew almost every single thing he said made sense and would make it a better manuscript. So so anyway, so I got that. So graduated in 2020 in the middle of shutdown and COVID and pandemic, and that was a mess. And then I started. So then I had back then they had a second reader. They don't do that anymore. And that was Dave Wyden. And while I was waiting for him to read, I started the second book. So I knew I wanted to do a series. And so then December of 2020, I started querying, which was, querying during the pandemic. Nobody else has any time but to query. And it's
Yeah.
just a devastating process because you have to fall in love with these agents. You identify them, you read all about them, you write them your love letter, that's the cover letter, and then you wait. And sometimes they
Right.
immediately say no, like just a boilerplate no. And sometimes
Mhm.
they hold on to it for 3 to 6 months. And you're going, oh, maybe. And and you just don't know if you're going to hit the right person at the right time.
Right.
So I finally, after I think I did a 60 or 65 agents that I queried, got a lot of requests for full and a lot of thank you, but no thank yous. And then I got the call, and this agent, when I was talking to her and she wanted to rep me, she said, it was like talking to me about my book. She knew it really well. She loved all the characters. She thought it was funny, where I thought it was funny. Hopefully it's funny. And and I just thought, well, if she's this in love with it, then she can sell it.
Yeah.
Then,
Yeah.
but she was a new agent and she had some contacts as a freelance editor, but after she submitted to them, it was still the pandemic and they weren't having, or she wasn't, face to face. And so it took a long time to pitch. And so by the time she pitched to my editor at Level Best Books, Sean Simmons, I had two full manuscripts, and I knew I was starting on the third, and I knew what the crime was going to be. So she could pitch that. So I got a 3-book contract. So I think
Fantastic. That's
I think the
terrific.
encouragement is that you can learn all the craft you want, but what you can't teach is determination. And I think if you
Yeah.
just are determined to do it and stick with it,
Yeah. Le-
you can get
Should
there. Yeah.
should we give a shout out to your agent?
Well, it's Gwen Jordan, Gwyn Jordan of Gold Dust Literary. I have no
Great.
idea if she's still doing submissions, but she's
We
great.
can we can at least give her a shout out. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one question in there just about the process again before we get to the story itself. Um, the query letter, were you changing the query letter along the way? Were you making improvements? I mean, that's its whole art form, and there's controversy too about how to structure those. Not major controversy, but you'll
Right.
hear slightly different, versions of how to
Yes.
approach it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Like some people want all the, what do they call it? All the boring details up front, or they want it in the back,
Right.
like how many words and, who you're comping, the titles you're comparing yourself to. Yeah, I changed it a lot because, and I'll tell you, one of the reasons I changed it was that I had started with Isabel, my villain, because she's a con woman. How interesting is that? And I got a very long, very sweet note from an agent saying no. And I can't remember exactly which one it was, but I think, anyway, she repped some, pretty names. If I remember them, you'd know, in the mystery suspense thriller category. And she said, I was looking for more interesting cons. And I thought, I like oversold myself. And so it wasn't a Ripley. It was it was had more to do with Frank. And so then I rewrote it and started with Frank because it's his story, and Ronnie is in there as well. But that taught me a lot, that she I sent over the query on Sunday, figuring it would be in her inbox on Monday morning, and she responded immediately, said, "Send me." I can't remember if it's a full or a partial, 50 pages or more. And then she responded, like, that was immediately on Sunday, and I think by Wednesday was when this letter came in, and I was just, I felt so stupid for having pitched it from the con woman standpoint.
Yeah, you don't know. You really don't know. The match between querying author and agent is you just don't know. I mean, can they see past sort of their particular requirements about formatting and how they like their query letters approached to understanding the nugget of what you're trying to, the book and the story you're trying to sell. So, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
interesting.
the main advice for querying is to follow their instructions
Yeah,
on their
yeah,
website.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I remember one person asked for the first 9 pages, and I think that's just to see, do you hit the ground running and can you follow directions?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's get into it. Tell us about,
Okay.
give us the pitch letter. Tell
Not
us
not the pitch, not the
yeah.
pitch. Well, the Brownstone at East 83rd is obviously it's a crime novel. It's it has my
Mm.
con woman Isabel Anderson is trying to. She has a bunch of different schemes to try to hold on to the Brownstone because you could imagine what New York City property taxes are like, and she's broke, and and so Ronnie Charles is at when the in the prologue she's living on the streets and is waitressing just tray service at a charity gig and because she does have a white shirt and black trousers and she doesn't really know why she does this but she does it. She steals Isabel's diamond bracelet off her wrist while she's serving and Isabel catches her and essentially kidnaps her and says, "You're going to come work." Because Ronnie's very androgynous, and she said, "You're going to come work for me and be my butler and throw my marks off balance." And so Ronnie thinks, "Well, at least I'll have a bed for the night, and so she says yes, even though she doesn't really have a choice. And that's sort of the start of Ronnie and Isabel together. And then there's Frank Jankowski's the special agent, the FBI special agent, and for various reasons he has his eye on the Brownstone, and so he realizes that he has an in, so he goes undercover and gets an invitation to meet Isabel, and she decides that he's her new mark, and so. Even though he's very moral, very upright, he gets really entangled, and it's kind of not his fault because she's very seductive, and so things things happen.
What do you mean it's not its fault? She's very seductive. He's hopeless. He's helpless.
Well, he's not. He she's pretty strong.
Yeah.
It's almost as if there's not much anybody can do when they're around Isabel. It's sort of this magic.
Aha.
She seduced me. I don't know.
And is there an actual brownstone that you've picked out that is in your mind or, physically there and represents? I
Yeah.
know New York's full of brownstones.
Yeah, there's more on the Upper West Side, I guess, than the Upper East Side. But I have an idea of where I want it. I never put the address because it's closer to Fifth Avenue, and where I was thinking of
Mhm.
it's there's not a actual brownstone, but it's close enough, and author's prerogative.
Yeah. Yeah. So are these recurring characters going forward? Any?
They are. Most of them are. It sort of feels like I'm cheating because I just took Ronnie and Frank, and then the a lot of side character, the characters around them, and just put them in the next book and changed. We have a new villain and a new spot because it's the penthouse on Park Avenue, and the crime is money laundering for a drug cartel, Mexican drug cartel, and so we have the money law, and Ronnie um, will get hired as a butler because she's been trained by Isabel to be a butler and feed Frank the information that he needs to try to take down the money launderer.
Nice, nice. So this relationship between Ronnie and Frank really, it sounds like it's something you kind of discovered as you went, and now you're really
Mm-hmm.
exploiting it. It sounds like a really cool relationship.
It is kind of cool. It's I mean I guess I have to give this away since Ronnie and Frank go on to the next book, but at some point So back up. Frank's daughter, who's a teenager, got addicted to opioids. Against she had been in a bad accident, and because through the hospitalization and the painkiller, she got addicted to opioids, and they put her in rehab, and she ran away. And so she's out there somewhere. And Frank watches Ronnie as he's at Isabel's dinner parties and realizes that she used to live. He figures she used to be on the streets, and so he accosts her outside of the Brownstone and basically tells her who he is and asks for her help in looking for Kathy. And so that is a pretty, plays a pretty big part in the two of them. And so it's sort of, not really, but sort of buddy cop. But ever so often, Frank tries to keep Ronnie in line by threatening to arrest her. And Ronnie's just like, why do you have to do that? I'm here, dude. So but it is a nice sort of friendship. I
Yeah.
think he's the father she never could have had.
So you mentioned in the query letter you had to make some comparable titles to mention some other books that are similar
Yeah,
to, and just to give our
don't
listeners
ask
some
me. No,
give what how do you who do you like and who would you compare it to?
oh, okay. I can't compare myself to anyone. I have to say, I don't even remember who I put in the query letter. It may have been like an Alifair Burke because she writes detective stories in New York City, but I think that's sort of egotistical on my. I'll tell you, I just read Barbara Nicholas's The Drowning Game,
So
and I
good.
felt,
So good.
oh, so good. And
Yeah.
I felt like some of that was similar to my writing in I don't know, the interactions of the people, the characters, and the descriptions, and sort of the observations of human relationships and things like that. And then also, this is another egotistical thing, is Rob Hart. I just read his Assassins Anonymous as well, and he's just such, to me, he's like on a pedestal. He's way up there in terms of his writing and how prolific he is. But I felt like there were some similarities as well about not stopping out of the action, but incorporating into the action those little descriptions and the things that make you feel like you're right there. And he writes about New York as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
It, it's it,
those are at least two people I admire.
yeah. That's great. I mean, it's interesting with mysteries and crime fiction. I'm a big fan, obviously, as well. Um, just how you hit that tone of humor and how dry and dark you want to be, or how do you want it a little bit breezy? Do you want it a little bit light? Do you want a little bit of comic relief? I mean, just the old you know, some of the Raymond Chandler sort of metaphors they're so interesting that they almost are a comic relief because they're a little bit over the top. And that has become a little bit of a cliche in crime fiction, is to have a really good metaphor game. And also just, the whole idea of maybe some darker crime, but a couple of cops that are sort of a light tone of discussing it, almost cynical, jaded,
Hmm. Yes.
on top of it. But it's just always interesting what every author brings to that equation, how much to balance darkness, lightness, humor, tragedy.
Yeah. I think there was a whole panel on that. Were you on that panel with about noir? Maybe not. That I think Tom Andes was running, and it.
I was on one about serial killers and I moderated one about
Okay.
noir, but yeah,
Oh, you were not the moderator for that. Yeah.
yeah,
And anyway, so they were talking about how I think noir. I mean, I don't think mine is noir. I don't think it's dark enough. Um, but but I think that you have to have, when you have that really gritty stuff, you have to have a relief. Um, and so I think but also I think that dark humor, like you said, the cynicism, it goes hand in hand with the grittiness and the darkness. So I think, and I can't tell you, I don't have a formula like every third chapter is hilarious. I mean, I do try to weave it in, and I guess I find things really funny. So I throw stuff in there.
Yeah.
Um, and and I just think you sometimes you just have to laugh, but you do when it is serious and when there is something awful happening, like looking for his runaway daughter in the tunnels and the subways. You have to stay with that darkness because that's the sort of honest emotion of it. So
Yeah.
it's you don't want to be too flippant. I guess that was one of the things I remember learning in one of the workshops was I would sort of leave the scene with a flippant remark and let's go on to the next one. And the person running it was Tiffany Quay Tyson. She said, "You leave before you hit the emotion." And I went, "Ah, you could be really cute, but let's actually dive in there and really look at what's going on here." And so that really taught me to try to listen to, what does this mean to these characters? What are they thinking and feeling? How do they feel about having been just told that? And so so I did try to take it further, you know, with that advice.
That's great. Yep. Tiffany's awesome too.
Yeah,
That's
she's a good
amazing.
instructor.
Yep. Very good. Well, I mean, I've got to ask the typical question. How does it feel at 65, since you revealed that,
Yeah,
to
it's
it sounds like you're really starting another career.
I am. I am. In fact, that's
Yeah.
one of the talks that I'm developing is sort of it's I don't know if it's my fifth career because I was in publishing and then I was basically helping my husband develop and run his company, which is why we moved to the mountains, and raising my kids and having so much fun with their childhood and enjoying them as adults, and now you know it's my turn, and I just it's just so I'm having so much fun with it, and luckily I like to do stuff like this. I think for a while I worried that I was too much of an extrovert to be a writer, but I think it's possible to do both, to
Yeah.
sit and write with yourself and then go out and talk reading and if they'd like to read your book.
Yeah.
But I think it's important. I think when I was in college they all said, oh, you can have it all, which of course is the recipe for burnout and disaster. And I think that you can have it all, but maybe sequentially, as you go along, you can have the next phase. And everybody's living longer, so I'm hoping that
Yeah.
I have several decades of this,
Yeah.
if
Why not?
possible.
Sure. Very good. Wow. Excellent. Well, this has just been fantastic and congratulations.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. Yep. I relate. I didn't get published till I was 54 quite a while ago. And at even then I thought, I worked at it for quite a while and it came finally and you know, we're just
Yeah.
kept on going. So persistence is part of this whole game. Persistence and
Yeah,
determination. Yeah. Yeah.
it really is. It really is. Just, don't let it get you down. Just keep going. Keep
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, we always like to just kind of pay it forward, mention a book or an author you think more folks should be reading.
Well, apart from those two I mentioned before,
Yeah.
I'll tell you who I love, and he I think he needs more traction. It's a pseudonym for I don't know who, James Byrne. It's Byrne, and he writes the Des Limerick series. So it's Dez and then Limerick, and Des Limerick is just a unique character. He's hilarious, but he's also deadly. But he only kills the bad guys. But he usually, I mean, I hate to say MacGyver it because it makes it sound silly, but he often does not use a gun and he just uses what's at hand, and it might be a bolt that he, makes a slingshot for, and he just but he also enjoys life and he is very amusing about things, and so and then twisty plots and everything. It's a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Well, Jenny, Dandy, thanks again for jumping on the podcast today. We'll see you maybe at the next Crime Writer Conference and or Colorado Gold for Rocky Mountain Fiction
Yep.
Writers.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Well, good
Great.
luck and congratulations again.
Well, thank you so much.